Could the current economic turbulence be a precursor to the rise of the Antichrist? The Bible tells us that the Antichrist will use economic means to control people, making them dependent on accepting his mark for their livelihoods. If the economy collapses, it could set the stage for a charismatic leader to promise stability and prosperity in exchange for allegiance and the acceptance of his mark. Could it be that the unprecedented levels of debt, inflation, and unemployment are signs of a greater, more sinister plan unfolding? Could it be that the instability we see today is part of a deliberate scheme to destabilize global economies, making way for a one-world currency? Could it be that the advancements in technology, particularly in financial technologies and digital currencies, are paving the way for the Antichrist control over economic transactions? As cash becomes obsolete and digital currencies take over, the possibility of a single entity controlling these systems becomes more plausible. Could it be that the increasing centralization of power and resources is a strategic move to create a world where people are more easily controlled and manipulated? Could it be that the fear and uncertainty in today's markets are not just reactions to economic data, but are also influenced by a deeper underlying spiritual battle, an underlying spiritual battle that cannot be seen by the naked eye? As we consider the ever-growing national debt and the instability it brings, it is important to ask, could it be that the Antichrist will take center stage as a result of economic collapse? This question may sound dramatic, but as Christians, we are called to be vigilant and discerning, especially as we witness increasing chaos around us. The Bible portrays the arrival of the Antichrist as occurring during a time of great turmoil and upheaval. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 6-7, Jesus warns us of wars, famines, and global instability, conditions that could easily pave the way for a charismatic leader who promises peace and stability, but at a cost far greater than we might imagine. Could it be that the Antichrist will take center stage because of economic collapse? One of the key issues fueling global instability today is the ever-growing national debt. The U.S. national debt surpassed $35 trillion in July 2024 and is projected to reach $36 trillion within the next 12 to 18 months. The U.S. government accumulated $1 trillion in debt in just the first half of 2024 alone. This rapidly increasing debt is not only a financial burden on the nation, but it also weakens the country's global position. As the United States becomes more indebted, it loses leverage and influence on the world stage. When a nation's financial power wanes, it becomes vulnerable to external control. What is it that raises debt like nothing else? Wars. Wars are extraordinarily expensive endeavors that require vast amounts of resources. They push national debts higher and create ripple effects across economies. This is nothing new. Wars have always carried a heavy financial toll. From the world wars of the 20th century to the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East, wars have left nations financially crippled. In Matthew chapter 24, verses 6-7, Jesus speaks of wars and rumors of wars as signs of the end times. These conflicts not only cause widespread destruction and loss of life, but they also contribute to the instability that could usher in the rise of a one-world government or leader. Let's move on to a discussion in many Christian circles. While many Christian ministers argue that discussions around a cashless society are merely fear-mongering or irrelevant to prophecy, they miss a critical point. A cashless society would indeed provide an easier and more effective means for any government, and ultimately the Antichrist when he arrives, to track, control, and manipulate people. This is not to suggest that a cash-based economy could prevent the rise of the Antichrist, for nothing can stop the fulfillment of God's prophetic plan. However, it is undeniable that the implementation of a cashless society would enable a new level of control that is unlike anything we have seen before. The growing shift toward a cashless society. In recent years, we have witnessed a significant global shift toward digital payments and away from cash transactions. Whether we like it or not, the trajectory of the world's economic system is rapidly moving toward a cashless society. The decline in the use of cash has been particularly notable in our nation. According to a report by the Federal Reserve, cash payments accounted for just 19% of all transactions in 2022, down from 26% in 2019. This decline has accelerated in the wake of the 2020 pandemic, as contactless payment methods such as credit cards, mobile payments, and digital wallets have gained popularity. Experts project that cash payments in the US will continue to decrease, potentially dropping to as low as 10% of transactions by 2030. Numerous businesses have already taken steps to eliminate cash altogether. For example, some large retailers like Amazon's cashierless stores and food chains like Sweetgreen and Starbucks have adopted policies that either discourage or outright reject cash payments. Many airlines, including American Airlines and Southwest, have also shifted to entirely cashless transactions for in-flight purchases. Even public transportation systems, such as those in cities like New York and Chicago, are increasingly adopting cashless payment methods like tap-and-go cards or mobile payment apps. These developments are often presented as improvements in efficiency, speed, and hygiene, but they also signify a trend that is moving society closer to a fully cashless economy. Proponents of a cashless society often emphasize the convenience of digital transactions. They argue that cashless payments are faster, more secure, and less cumbersome. No need to carry loose change or worry about losing a wallet. Just tap your phone or card, and the transaction is done. In many ways, these arguments are valid. Cashless transactions are often quicker, and they reduce the risk of theft or physical loss. But this convenience comes at a cost. What many people fail to consider is the level of control that a cashless society would place in the hands of governments and corporations. Digital transactions can be tracked, recorded, and monitored in ways that cash payments cannot. Every purchase, every donation, every financial decision you make becomes part of a digital trail that can be scrutinized by those in power. They know what you buy, where you buy it, how often you buy it, and how much you buy it for. In a cashless society, anonymity in transactions becomes virtually impossible. This, in turn, allows for unprecedented levels of surveillance and control. At this point, don't you think we are just one step away from a world where you cannot buy or sell without a mark? We need only look at recent events around the world to see how quickly financial systems can be used to exert control over populations. In Canada, during the 2022 trucker protests, the government froze the bank accounts of individuals who supported the protests, cutting them off from their funds and effectively stifling dissent. Similarly, in China, the government has implemented a social credit system that tracks citizens' behavior and assigns them a score based on their financial transactions, social interactions, and other activities. Those with low scores face restrictions on travel, access to loans, and even employment opportunities. These examples should serve as a stark reminder that the same technologies that make our lives more convenient can also be used to control and manipulate us. One of the most apparent characteristics of the Antichrist, as described in the book of Revelation, is the level of control he will exert over the world. In Revelation 13:16, 17, we read that he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. This passage makes it clear that the Antichrist will use economic means to control people, requiring them to accept his mark in order to participate in commerce. A cashless society where all transactions are conducted digitally would make it far easier for such a system to be implemented. In a world where every financial transaction is tracked and controlled, those who refuse to comply with the Antichrist's demands would be easily cut off from their livelihoods. No mark, no access to the digital economy. This level of control would be difficult in a cash-based society, where individuals could still barter, trade, and conduct business outside of the government's surveillance. But in a cashless society, where every transaction is digital, there would be no escape from the system of control that the Antichrist will enforce. It is important to note that I am not suggesting that the rise of digital currencies and the decline of cash are inherently evil, or that they are direct indicators of the imminent return of the Lord. As Christians, we must be cautious about making definitive claims regarding the timing of the end times. We must not be involved in the business of date setting, as Jesus himself warned us in Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, that of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. However, it is undeniable that the trend toward a cashless society aligns with the conditions that could allow for the kind of control the Bible describes in the 13th chapter of the book of Revelation. The move toward a cashless society is not limited to the United States. Around the world, countries are embracing digital payment systems and phasing out cash. In Sweden, for example, only 9% of transactions were conducted in cash as of 2021, and the country is on track to become one of the first fully cashless societies. Many Swedish businesses no longer accept cash, and even some churches have adopted mobile payment systems for donations. The Swedish government is actively encouraging the use of digital payments, citing efficiency and security as primary benefits. In China, digital payments through apps like WeChat Pay and Alipay have become the norm, with over 90% of urban consumers using these platforms for daily transactions. The Chinese government has also launched its own digital currency, the digital yuan, which further consolidates control over the country's financial system. With the ability to track every transaction, the government can monitor spending habits, detect suspicious activity, and potentially punish citizens who do not comply with state directives. Even in countries that are not as far along the path to a cashless society, the trend is unmistakable. The European Central Bank is considering the introduction of a digital euro, and countries like the United Kingdom and Australia are seeing a significant reduction in cash usage. In Australia, for instance, the Reserve Bank reported that cash payments accounted for only 27% of consumer transactions in 2019, down from 69% in 2007. This decline is expected to continue as more businesses adopt digital payment methods. These trends are not merely theoretical, they are happening now, and they are reshaping the way we interact with money and commerce. The push for digital currencies and the phasing out of cash may seem like natural progress, but we must not be blind to the potential dangers that come with this shift. While it is tempting to see the coming cashless society as a direct indicator that the Lord's return is imminent, we must be careful not to conflate technological advancements with biblical prophecy prematurely. A cashless society is not, in and of itself, a sign that the end times are upon us. After all, technological progress is a natural part of human history, and many innovations have brought significant benefits to society. However, we cannot ignore the fact that a cashless society would make it easier for any government, whether totalitarian or otherwise, to control its citizens. This is not just a theory, it is a reality of human existence. As more transactions move online, governments and corporations gain greater visibility into our financial lives. In the final analysis, the rise of a cashless society is not inherently tied to the timing of the Antichrist's appearance, but it does represent a significant shift in the way control is exercised over individuals. As Christians, we must remain vigilant and discerning, recognizing that while technological advancements may bring convenience and efficiency, they also bring new challenges to our freedom and privacy. As we navigate these uncertain times, it is crucial that we remain grounded in our faith. The Bible reminds us that no matter what happens in the world, God is sovereign and His plans will prevail. While we may be concerned about the implications of a cashless society, we must not allow fear to consume us. Instead, we should place our trust in God, knowing that He will never leave us nor forsake us. In the midst of all this speculation, it is essential that we, as Christians, remember where our true hope lies. The Bible warns us of coming trials and tribulations, but it also promises that God will never leave us nor forsake us. As we face the uncertainties of the future, we must keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, knowing that He is our refuge and strength. In Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5, we are reminded, "Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have, for He hath said, I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee." No matter how dire the financial situation becomes, we can rest in the assurance that God will provide for us. Our security does not depend on the stock market, the national debt, or the state of the global economy. It depends on the faithfulness of God. Our response to the uncertainty of the times should not be one of fear, but of faith. Instead of worrying about the future, we should be focusing on strengthening our relationship with God. We need to make sure that we are spending time in prayer, reading the Bible, and seeking God's guidance for our lives. We need to trust that He will provide for our needs, even when the world around us seems to be falling apart. It is also important to encourage one another during these challenging times. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11, Paul writes, Wherefore comfort yourselves together, and edify one another, even as also ye do. We are called to build each other up, to remind one another of God's promises, and to support one another through the trials of life. As the world becomes more unstable, we must stand firm in our faith and encourage our fellow believers to do the same. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is the rock upon which we stand, and no matter what happens in the world, He will never leave us nor forsake us. When the storms of life rage around us, we can find peace in the knowledge that God is in control. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 to 7, Paul encourages us not to be anxious, but to bring our requests to God in prayer. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God, and the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus.